We were just speaking last week about different organizations. There's one thing that I'm noticing about Liberians being a part of that community is that there's so many of us who don't know each other. I mean, I speak to Liberians all the time who don't know who Lema Bawe is. They say, who that woman? What she do? And you know what I mean? There are many, what'd you say? No, I do know that. Yeah, okay, so Koswa, please.
No, just to say that very much, I mean, I think people know that very much the women wore white, and it was very much the market women who were very responsible for sitting in the marketplaces in white, in the sun, complete hours, days, and they would watch the presidential procession go, and they refused to move, and they wore white, and they started to travel the country, and it was very much a movement that started with the market women. In fact, if you go deeply into it, you know, there were other factions that they felt were more, the market women sat on the ground, some women sat on the stool, but it was a movement of the market women and of the everyday woman who wore white and insisted that this war must end, and they were going to stay that way. And a lot of them who went into the interior and went and negotiated with the different warlords. These were not, you know, sort of necessarily all highly educated, you know, moving around in their jeeps. Women walked, and the market women, basically it's like a strike, and persuaded their husbands and, you know, to join it to help end the war, so.
Yeah, you did something last week.
Oh, no, that was our foundation, though. Okay. Yes. Yes, yes, this is something different, our kayak girls. Yes, our foundation, which home are the girls who carry, you know, in the marketplaces, and they carry things and often quite abuse. So our foundation, Busia Foundation, had done a choral for them and brought them to the theater, because we have a 10,000 girls campaign, by the way, to bring girls to this show. 10,000 is our aim. I don't know what we're on. I don't know if any of our producers are here, or if Jen, yes, I don't know what number we're on. Good. How many? 4? We've taken 40,000, so 4,000. So we need another 6,000 where we have people sponsor to have girls who don't have an opportunity to come to the theater. They sponsor, they pay for them. So if you're interested in that, please talk to our female producer. Because we broke all records being the first female cast on Broadway. Aaliyah Jones Harvey, they're the only African American producers on Broadway whatsoever.
More questions?
I think we're all quite funny.
No. Pascal has to answer this question, because it's something, when I first met her, as I said, I came late to the show, and I'm always telling her I find it phenomenally amazing, because to be able to put humor and then still keep the audience in this is an incredible art. So how, Pascal Armand, do you do that?
Well, I guess the first thing is that I don't play for laughs. I just don't. The stakes are just as high for Bessie, even though people might think, oh, she's fighting for hair, and, you know, her fetish is, you know, like trying to look good, or it's very real to her. My backstory, just to share, I believe that when Bessie was taken from her village, she was abducted, she was getting her hair braided. She was getting her hair braided. She was in between someone's legs, as we all know we've done at one point or another in our lives. A very normal thing that black girls do. They sit in between their an elder, their mother's, their aunt's legs, and they get their hair braided. And somebody came and just took her. Her way of getting back to normalcy, someone has to braid her hair. It's just her thing. It gives her a way out while she's still in. And this is how she does it. The wigs, I can't explain them.
They're just funny because they just look so bad.
But they're mine. Anyway, and she holds on to that. She's fighting boredom. When that radio comes, she's gonna get down. She's gonna get down. The food. These are all things that I think anybody would be dealing with. Boredom, hunger.
Raging hormones in your case.
Right, yeah. All of these things that heat, it's hot. All types of things that in a regular circumstance would be nothing to anyone else. You're hungry, just go out and get yourself a sandwich or whatever. But in these dire circumstances, they become something that is, it's more, and it's an elevated thing. And for Bessie, just as much as it is important for all of us to survive in this war, it's just as important for her to look good. It's just as important for her to eat. It's just as important for her not to be as bored as anybody, and to somehow
Normalize everything.
right, exactly. To somehow deal with what is going on in her body that was not of her choice or making. Somebody impose this on her, and she's got to find a way to deal. So I do not play for laughs. It's my stakes are just as important as anybody else's. Every woman's individual reasons, objectives, motives in the play. I gotta get my hair. I gotta get some food and radio.
You know, I tell you guys something fascinating too. If you do research on any people who have experienced sexual trauma, if you research sex workers from various countries, the jokes and the things that they say and the things that they joke about, you will be like, what? If you just Google it. You know, if you see some of the documentaries that are out there. And so, you know, people laugh to keep from crying. You know, it's a natural part of human life, you know, and so I think Danai Gurira, she really built that into the script. You know, it's allowed for us to, you know, have this play where we go back and forth, you know, and, you know, I think it's built into the story, and it's just a necessity because we must have levity. We couldn't just have you guys sitting here boo-hooing the entire time. What would you do, you know?
Well, and also another thing too, it normalizes, and then it also helps to see that you see that within this horrible circumstance that these women are living in, they're human. There's laughter within tragedy. So, you know, it's just playing both of them. And you couldn't go through watching a 2.5 hour show and there isn't something, you know. But it also helps for people to understand, if we use humor in the show, it helps to to bring in the humanity. You start to realize, like, this is like my sister. She would make jokes like that, or she does that crazy stuff with her. You start to realize that these women are no different from you. You know, it normalizes the situation, and it also brings you in and helps you to see that they are these women are no different from any one of us here. We're not other, or we're not over there anymore. This is happening here too. So.
Yep. No,
There's a young lady who has a
passing it to
question.
her.
Oh.
The language that you speak on the stage, how did you develop that, and the speed with which you speak?
She asked the language that we speak on stage, how did we develop it, and also the speed that we speak. And first of all, there was a language coach. We had a dialogue coach, I should say, a very gifted dialogue coach. And as Sekon said, we come from different places. So Sekon she doesn't like to take on the mantle when we say she's Liberian and she had the accent. She'll say, oh, don't follow me, because she'll say her family, you know, maybe think she's not as deep in. But to our ears, she was deep in. And we all come from different, I think Zainab and I probably got whipped the most because we come from British West Africa, and it's very, very different from the American Liberian. But we had a coach, and actually when you say deep, we have pulled all the way back. When we finished being coached at the public, people were saying, we can't, what are those women saying? So actually to us now, it doesn't sound like much of an accent because we had to pull, it doesn't sound like it because we had to pull so far back. And for me, I was always a bit above them. And so when they pulled and then I pulled, it feels very, but we still get audiences in sometimes who say, wow. So for us, it doesn't sound so far.
Yeah. Yeah, we really had to dilute it and really, you know.
There's a lot of consonants that are missing.
Yeah, Liberians tend to drop. They don't pay attention to consonants at all. They just ignore it. So we had to put in the consonants.
And the thing that I love so much about our dialect coach, Beth McGuire, she's written a book on African accents. And I value the fact that she has taken time in her career to dedicate that because, you know, if you ask someone, is there a difference between an Australian accent and an Irish accent or a Scottish accent? And I'm picking those three in particular because of the similarities that they have. And people say, oh, they're so different. But if you ask someone, what is an African accent? They don't, you know, they have one generic thing that they do. And the Liberian accent is different than the Nigerian, it's different than the Ghanaian, it's different than the Zimbabwean. You know, Africa, of course, we all know in this room, is a continent. And so, you know, we're thrilled that we did all this deep accent work for Liberia, and then we had to pull it all back because the people are like, why is it? We don't understand anything. So, you know, we're so proud of the work that we do and the fact that people can still go home and, you know, people come up to me all the time and they say something twice. They say, oh, nice, fine, good. They love it, you know, so.
And you know what's really interesting about the Liberian accent, just to really point out how different it is and how specific we had to get. I'm from Sierra Leone, next door to Liberia. Liberia is the only country that was settled by Americans, and they're apparently, Southern especially, apparently they speak English. I grew up next door to them. We have no idea what they're saying half the time, and we are apparently speaking English. So it's so different, and Beth is her ear is fantastic because she could always tell when me, Akoswa, or Lupita, with a Kenyan background, we would go into our British thing, and she's like, no, you've gone into your British place. We're placing the voices in a completely different place, and her ear is fantastic. And I've worked with her on about 3 or 4 different plays. I've learned a Sudanese accent with her. I've done Congolese with her, and Zimbabwe, and she's fantastic. So it's just really great to work on something where we get to be so specific and not do a generic wash of an African accent. Yeah.
So you mentioned that the play is coming, at least on Broadway, to a close on
June 19th.
So what would, as members of the cast that have taken this journey, would be the 1 or 2 calls to action that you want audiences to leave here with and to do?
Very good question. You want to start?
We should give the audience a mic. He was wondering what, as a cast, we would want as the call to action for people who have watched this play. I think for me, one of the big things, you know, sometimes we've done interviews or people have said, you know, they'll talk about, oh, what happened in Liberia. The first thing I would like people to do is connect what's happening here with all wars. We're depicting Liberia, but it's Syria, you know, slot another name into it, and you have the same result, especially for the women. They are always this kind of victim in war, you know, and they are always turned into sex slaves, cook slaves, you know. And so to see this story, but relate it, and also the way that the war grew and perpetuated, we should have checks and balances when we see this creeping up, this kind of craziness creeping up. And a lot of times the United States will only intervene when it's commerce. So we have to intervene ourselves in countries where there is no commerce. So that's one thing I would like people to take from this, that each and every single, this war was ended by market women and women. Everybody's important, everybody has a voice, everyone can fight. And fighting not with arms, but fighting when you hear the wind coming, when you hear liberties being crushed, talk quickly. Don't wait until the situation is so bad you just want to take an airplane and get out of there, because there will be people who can't catch that same plane. So that's one. And it happens everywhere. I mean, I remember once we were doing an interview and the woman said, oh, you know, the things over there. I said, listen, when I first came to America, I was terrified because in Los Angeles, California, they were snatching girls at taco stands and they were putting them in vans and doing what they called running the train, moving from place to place. And they'd have it online and men were coming and raping them and the police couldn't find them because then they moved. This is happening everywhere. So I would like no audience member to sit back and think, wow, look at what's happening in Liberia. Look at what the Africans or the this or the that. It's everywhere. And we need to protect all women, all children, and both sexes, you know, but we need to protect victims of war. And we need to stop wars happening because we do have the power. If we're not complacent, we have the power.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I agree. I think women are the most vulnerable in times of war, but actually there is a war in this country. There are sex slaves in this country. Many of them are being trafficked from Mexico and Central America. But as Phil mentioned, I run a clinic for survivors of sex trafficking and sexual violence in New York, and most of those people were arrested in New York as prostitutes, as the police see them. And it turns out that they were brought to the United States, and it's mostly being run in Queens. So I think we do need to remember that a lot of this is happening in the United States. If you walk in Queens, you can be handed a girl card and you can be delivered a girl against her will to your house. So sexual violence isn't just happening in Liberia, it's not just happening in other countries. Women and these are not just underage girls either. And so I think while many come from other countries, many are very vulnerable here, and they are American girls. And so I think what I really like about this play is that it calls attention to the sexual violence that's happening, but I don't think it's only saying that it's happening just because there's a war. And I think it shows the nuanced things that happen with sexual violence. It doesn't just say that rape is something that happens one time and then you think about that one incident forever. I mean, it shows that women, you know, kind of experience it in many different ways and then sort of sometimes have to accommodate it in their lives. But it happens everywhere, it happens all over the place, and it is happening here, so I'm really glad you brought it up.
Won an Oscar for playing a woman, Room.
Exactly.
It was an Oscar-nominated film.
Well deserved, yeah.
Exactly. And she had a child in a room
Yeah.
because someone abducted her years ago and kept her in a room for years. This child only knew this cubicle. That was his world. Exactly, and there was no war.
Yeah.
That's not a war. That was just happening.
Ironically, one of the tools that she used, but also that was the market women used, was to use sex or the abstinence of sex as a tool. When they started refusing to have sex, then they really got the attention of all the men in the leadership.
One last question. Because we only have like a minute or two left, so I'm going to be a little naughty and sort of run down the line here. Just Veronica and Esther, based on what Sekon said about Eclipsed and the title, can you talk a little bit about what can be done to make it so the light comes back, you know, from a medical perspective, psychological, medical, any other way that you know of in your experience? And for the actresses, do you ever think about where these women would be now?
Well, I actually think things like this are really important. I think media attention is kind of where things start because I think that a lot of people don't hear about stories like this. I think, you know, MSF is trying to do work on sexual and gender-based violence. They have projects in places like Papua New Guinea, but many times people don't hear about what we're doing. And so I think the media is an important place to start. And for a long time, people didn't have the stomach to hear about sexual violence because it just sounded like a bummer. But we have to hear about it and we have to talk about it. And coming to see plays like this, where we see women as fully formed human beings with senses of humor who also take power and are three-dimensional people, and we realize that it's not just a bummer, it's really a fully emotionally experience, means that we have the stomach for more and more stories like this. So I think this is a huge start. So thank you, all of you, very much.
Yes, one of the purposes of MSF is to bear witness and to tell. And that's one of the things that this play does, is bear witness and to tell the story and to stand by the victims also. And that's what you do. Thank you.
Motion to
Union rules. Thank you so much to MSF and to Mike Majors who organized this group here tonight. We're so appreciative of you coming to see the show and for you sharing some of your experience, which I think was very insightful for all of us. Thank you.